The fortress stood like a silent mountain in the middle of the ruined world, its black stone walls rising into the night sky. Around it, the ground was cracked, dry, and lifeless. The wind howled through the broken towers, carrying whispers of things long dead inside the fortress. One man walked alone, his boots echoing against the cold floors. His name was Ethan, a human soldier far from Earth, guarding a place he barely understood. He had been sent there weeks ago, told only that his duty was to keep watch over the alien mistress who ruled these dark halls. She was feared across the galaxy, known for her beauty and her cruelty. But to Ethan, she was nothing more than another mission. He was tired, his mind weighed down by silence and shadows, yet his steps never faltered. That night, something strange waited for him at the end of a long corridor. The hall was lit by flickering blue flames trapped inside crystal lamps. Their light danced. On the walls and in the center of the chamber lay a glittering pile of treasure. Gold coins, jewels that glowed like stars, strange alien artifacts shaped from metals Ethan had never seen. The sight almost blinded him. Ethan froze, his training whispered inside his head. Treasure never lay unguarded, especially not in the heart of an enemy fortress. His eyes narrowed as he scanned the chamber. The air was too still. The silence, too heavy. His hand brushed against his rifle, but he did not raise it. Instead, he whispered to himself, "This is a trap." From the shadows above, unseen eyes watched him. The alien mistress sat on a throne carved into the wall, her long figure, draped in robes that shimmered like liquid silver. Her face was half hidden by a veil, but her glowing eyes burned through the cloth. She leaned forward, eager to see how the human would act. She had set the bait, certain he would reveal his greed. Ethan did not step closer. He crouched low, searching for signs, footprints, hidden wires, movement in the corners. He spotted something small, almost invisible, thin threads of light connecting the gold pieces to the walls. A single wrong move and the whole room might close in on him. He stood, again shaking his head. The mistress smirked behind her veil. Humans were weak, she thought. They all wanted riches. They all bent to greed. Yet this one only looked at the treasure with suspicion. His voice low, he said again, "This is a trap." His refusal to touch it made her eyes narrow. For the first time, her game was not going. As planned, Ethan turned his back to the treasure, his steps calm, his shoulders steady. He walked away as though the gold was nothing but dust. The sound of his boots echoed against the chamber walls, and the treasure gleamed behind him, untouched. The mistress rose from her throne, her veil slipping slightly. Her lips curved into a smile that was not kind. Instead of victory, she felt a spark of anger. He was supposed to fall, to kneel, to grab at the treasure like every other man. Instead, he had walked away. Ethan did not know she followed him with her gaze. He only felt the weight of the fortress pressing against him. The walls seemed to breathe, the floors to whisper. He knew the game was only beginning. The mistress was watching, and she would not stop until she broke him. He reached the outer hall where the wind from broken windows carried the smell of dust and ash. His hands tightened around his weapon, not from fear, but from readiness. He spoke into the silence, his voice steady. "I am not here for gold." The fortress gave no answer, but in the high chamber behind him, the mistress's laughter rang softly, chilling and sharp. The bait had been set, but it had failed. Yet the mistress was not done. For her, this was no longer just a trap. It had become a challenge, and Ethan, the lone human guard, had unknowingly stepped into a game far more dangerous than he imagined. The treasure still lay in the chamber, shining under the cold blue flames, waiting for the next move, waiting for the moment the mistress would strike again. Ethan could feel the air change inside the fortress. The silence was no longer empty. It was heavy, like a presence pressing against his skin. He knew she was near. The one they called the mistress, the one whose name was spoken with both fear and desire across the stars. He stopped in the middle of the hall. His eyes searched the shadows. His breath was slow, his body tense. He raised his head, and there she was, descending the staircase at the far end of the chamber. Her steps were soft, like whispers. Her robes shimmered with every movement, silver and black flowing around her tall figure. The veil still covered most of her face, but her eyes were uncovered now, glowing like fire trapped in crystal. Ethan had seen many alien species before, but never. Eyes like hers, they seemed alive, burning with pride, cunning, and something darker. For a moment he felt them pulling at his thoughts like they wanted to peel him open, to look into his soul. "You disappoint me." Her voice echoed through the hall, soft but sharp. It carried both beauty and poison. "You were given a gift, a treasure beyond measure, and yet you walked away." She stopped only a few steps away from him, tilting her head. Her eyes never left his face. Ethan tightened his grip on his rifle. His voice was calm. It wasn't a gift, it was bait. The mistress's lips curved beneath the veil, a smile that was not kind. She circled him slowly, her eyes glowing brighter. "Humans," she whispered. "Always greedy, always hungry. You chase after gold, after power, after lies of freedom. I expected you to kneel like the others before you." She paused, her eyes narrowing. "But you did not. Why?" Ethan turned, watching her every step. "Because my loyalty is not for sale," he answered firmly. His voice echoed in the cold hall, and for the first time, her steps faltered. The mistress stopped behind him, close enough that her voice brushed against his ear like smoke. "Not for sale?" she repeated. "Everything has a price, human. Some break for wealth, some for fear, some for love." Her eyes glowed brighter, and Ethan felt the heat of her gaze burning into him. For a brief second, his vision blurred. He thought he saw Earth, green fields under a warm sky, the smell of home, the laughter of people he once knew. He shook his head, steadying his breath. His eyes cleared, and the vision was gone. The mistress was smiling wider now. "Even you have a weakness," she whispered. Ethan took one step forward, breaking the closeness. He kept his voice steady. "You can keep your tricks, you won't find it." The mistress tilted her head, her glowing eyes flashing with something sharp, anger, but also curiosity. She had dealt with humans before, smugglers, soldiers, thieves, diplomats. All of them had fallen to her traps. Some had begged, some had betrayed, some had died reaching for the treasure she offered, but this one was different. "You think you are strong," she said, her voice lower now. "But strength can be broken. You think you are loyal, but loyalty can be twisted. Tell me, human, how long will you last when the fortress itself turns against you?" The ground beneath Ethan's boots trembled. The blue flames along the walls flickered violently. Shadows stretched and curled like living things. The mistress raised her hand, and the air thickened with power. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever, filling the hall with burning light. Ethan braced himself. His heart beat faster, but his face stayed calm. He met her gaze without fear. His voice cut through the air. "As long as I have to." The mistress froze for a moment. Her eyes locked with his. She had expected fear, or weakness, or even silence. But what she saw in his eyes was steady, unyielding will. Her fingers curled. Slowly lowering her hand, the trembling stopped. The flames steadied. Her eyes softened just for a moment, then sharpened again. "You are stubborn, human," she said coldly, "but stubbornness will not save you." She stepped back, her silver robes flowing around her, her glowing eyes never leaving him. "This is only the beginning. The fortress will test you, and when you break, I will be there to watch." Ethan lowered his rifle slightly, not in surrender, but in quiet defiance. He met her burning eyes with his own steady gaze. "Then you will keep waiting," he said. For the first time in many years, the mistress felt something she had nearly forgotten. It was not anger. It was not desire. It was something deeper. Uncertainty. His words echoed in her ears, and her eyes, glowing like fire, betrayed a single flicker of doubt. The hall fell silent again. The mistress turned away, her robes trailing behind her like liquid shadow. As she vanished into the darkness, her glowing eyes were the last thing Ethan saw. Two burning lights watching him, promising more trials to come. Ethan stood alone in the silence once more. But now he knew. This was not just a mission. It was a battle of wills, and the mistress's eyes would follow him wherever he went, testing, waiting, daring him to falter. The fortress did not sleep. When the night deepened, when the stars outside were hidden by thick storm clouds, the walls themselves seemed to breathe. The air grew colder, the silence heavier, and Ethan knew he was no longer alone. He walked slowly through the stone halls, his rifle steady in his hands. The blue flames in the crystal lamps flickered weakly, casting long shadows that stretched like claws across the floor. His boots echoed with each step, but beneath that sound, he heard something else. Scratching, whispering, a low growl that did not belong to any human throat. Ethan stopped at a crossway where 3 corridors met. He raised his rifle, listening. The sound was close, moving around him, circling. He lowered his breathing, his training sharp in his mind. The enemy wanted him to panic, to fire blindly. But he waited. Calm as stone, the shadows thickened along the walls, bending unnaturally. From them stepped creatures he had never seen before. Their bodies were sleek and dark, with limbs too long, eyes glowing faint green like coals. They moved on all fours, their claws scratching the stone. Their mouths were filled with sharp teeth that dripped with glowing saliva. Ethan's finger tightened on the trigger, but he did not fire. Not yet. The beasts hissed, their bodies weaving like snakes, circling him. He counted 4, maybe 5. They were fast, too fast for a soldier to kill if he panicked. Above him, hidden in the shadows of a high balcony, the mistress watched. Her glowing eyes followed every movement. This was another test, one she had prepared carefully. She had unleashed her shadow beasts, expecting the human to die screaming or to waste his weapon on wild shots. She leaned forward, her lips curving beneath the veil, waiting for his failure. But Ethan did not fail. He crouched low, sliding his hand across the floor. He noticed the cracks in the stone, the loose debris near the corners, the old iron chains hanging from the walls. Every detail became a weapon in his eyes. The first beast lunged, its claws flashing. Ethan rolled to the side, grabbing a chain from the wall. With a swift motion, he swung it across the beast's head. The chain wrapped tight around its neck. He pulled hard, slamming it against the wall. The beast screeched, its glowing saliva burning the stone. The others attacked together, but Ethan was ready. He ducked under their claws, pushing a loose stone column. It toppled forward, crushing one beast beneath its weight. The hall filled with dust. The growls grew louder, and still Ethan fought, not with rage, but with clever strikes. He led the third beast into a corner where broken spears lay on the ground. With one quick kick, he drove a spear upward into its chest. It screamed, its body dissolving into mist. The fourth circled back, faster, angrier. Its teeth snapped inches. From Ethan's arm, he dropped to the ground, rolled, and pulled the chain tighter, dragging the still struggling first beast into the path of the fourth. Their bodies crashed together, claws tearing into each other until both dissolved into black smoke. The hall fell silent. Only dust and fading shadows remained. Ethan stood, his chest rising and falling with steady breaths. He wiped the sweat from his brow, his rifle still unfired. He had survived not by wasting bullets, but by turning the fortress itself into his weapon. From above, the mistress's eyes widened behind her veil. Her beasts, creatures that no man had ever escaped, had been defeated not with raw strength but with cunning. She had wanted to prove humans weak, slaves to fear. But this one, he had made her own shadows his tools. She leaned back in her throne, carved into the wall, her fingers tightening on the stone armrests. She whispered to herself, "Impossible." Yet she could not deny what she had seen. The human had not broken. He had grown stronger. Ethan looked around the ruined hall, the broken stones, the faint smoke drifting where beasts had once stood. He whispered under his breath, "So, this is the game." His voice was steady, his will unbroken. He knew the mistress was watching. He knew she would not stop. The fortress groaned around him, its walls shaking as if alive. The flames dimmed, and the shadows twisted again, but Ethan was not afraid. He stood tall in the silence, his eyes sharp, his mind ready. He had faced the mistress's beasts, and he had turned her trap against her. But he also knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. The fortress itself seemed to whisper that truth to him. Somewhere in the darkness, the mistress's laughter echoed, soft, haunting, promising more trials to come. Ethan walked forward, his boots steady, his rifle tight in his hands. His voice, low but firm, carried through the cold air. "You'll have to do better than that," he said. The shadows stirred again, but this time it was not the beasts who trembled. It was the mistress herself, hidden in the dark, realizing her prey was not prey at all. The human was not breaking. He was adapting. He was surviving, and the fortress, once her weapon, was slowly becoming his battlefield. The fortress was never still. Its walls whispered, its floors breathed, and every corner seemed to hide eyes. Ethan had walked through battlefields, through ruins, through storms of fire. But nothing felt like this place here. Danger did not only come from claws or teeth, it came from the mind, from the heart. The mistress watched him from above, her glowing eyes hidden behind her silver veil. She had seen him pass her tests of greed. She had seen him defeat her shadow beasts with cunning, but she was not finished. This time she would strike where no blade or bullet could defend him. She would strike at his deepest longing. Ethan entered a chamber he had never seen before. The doors closed behind him with a deep echo, sealing him in. The room was wide, its floor shining like glass. Blue flames flickered in tall crystal lamps, but the air was heavy, almost too heavy to breathe. At the far end of the chamber stood the mistress, her hands raised, her robes flowing like liquid shadow, her voice carried through the chamber. Soft, but sharp. "You say your loyalty cannot be bought, you say your strength cannot be broken, then tell me, human, what would you do if I offered you freedom? Not treasure, not gold, but freedom itself." Before Ethan could speak, the air shimmered. A vision grew before his eyes. It was Earth, bright and alive. The green fields he remembered. The smell of rain on the soil. He saw his home, small and simple, and he saw faces. Faces of those he had lost. His family, his friends. Their eyes filled with warmth as they called his name. His chest tightened, his hands shook. He wanted to reach out, to run forward, to step into that light. It felt so real, as if one step would carry him across galaxies back to where he belonged. The mistress's voice was like honey dripping with venom. "Swear yourself to me, Ethan. Take the treasure you refused, kneel before me, and I will give this to you. You will walk free, you will return to your world. You will hold those you miss again." Her eyes glowed brighter, feeding the vision, weaving it stronger. Ethan's knees felt weak. His heart screamed to believe it, his breath came fast. His hand reached halfway forward before he stopped. His fingers trembled in the air. Then he closed his eyes. He breathed once, steady, slow. He whispered to himself, "If I kneel to lies, I lose myself." The vision flickered. His home began to fade. The voices grew faint. The green fields withered to ash. He opened his eyes and looked at the mistress, his voice firm now. "This is not freedom, it's a chain, and I will not wear it." The mistress stepped back as though struck. Her glowing eyes trembled. Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time in years, someone had denied her illusions. She had broken kings and warriors with less. She had bent them with the promise of what they loved. Yet this human had refused. Her voice finally returned, but it cracked like thin glass. You turned away, even from your own heart," she whispered. "Why? Why resist the one thing all mortals crave?" Ethan's voice echoed through the chamber, strong and steady. "Because what you showed me was not real, and if I give my soul to lies, I will never deserve what is real." The chamber grew colder. The flames dimmed. Shadows curled tight around the mistress, as if even the fortress was shaken. She clenched her fists, her voice sharper now. "You will regret this, human. No one defies me and walks away unbroken." But her words carried less weight now, less power. For in her heart, a crack had opened. His refusal had pierced her pride. His strength had made her question her own. She turned, her robe swirling like a storm, her glowing eyes burned once more. But behind them lay something she did not wish to admit. Fear, Ethan lowered his rifle, not in surrender, but in quiet defiance. His voice calm. "Do what you must. I will not kneel." The mistress vanished into the shadows, her form dissolving into mist. The chamber fell silent. The vision of earth was gone, leaving only cold stone and flickering blue flames. Ethan stood alone once again, his heart heavy but unbroken. He whispered to himself, "She will try again. She will never stop." His voice carried no fear, only resolve. From the high walls of the fortress, the whispers grew louder, almost restless, as if the very stone felt the shift. The human was not falling. The mistress was the one being tested now, and somewhere deep inside the fortress the mistress herself trembled, her glowing eyes burning not only with anger, but with something else, something she could not name. The chains of temptation had failed, and the human had walked free. The fortress had been the mistress's hunting ground for years. Every corridor, every chamber, every shadow was shaped to break intruders. Yet after days within its twisting halls, Ethan began to notice something the mistress had never expected. The fortress could be turned against itself. He moved with purpose now. His eyes searched not only for traps, but for patterns. He saw how the stone walls shifted when pressure was applied, how the chains reacted to sound, how the flames dimmed when shadows drew near. It was alive in its own way, and he was learning its language. One night, when the fortress groaned and whispered its endless warnings, Ethan began laying small traps of his own. He used broken chains, shattered spears, and loose stones. He studied the paths the shadow beasts took, the corners where illusions grew strongest, and he marked them, piece by piece. He was no longer just surviving, he was preparing. The mistress watched from her hidden chamber, her glowing eyes sharp. At first she smiled, believing he was only delaying his defeat. But as the hours passed, she saw something she had never seen before. The human was not walking blindly into her designs. He was reshaping them, turning her fortress into his battlefield. When she appeared before him again, her voice was colder than ice. "You play games with my home, human. Do you think you can outwit me in my own domain?" Ethan looked up at her, calm and steady. "It's not your domain anymore," he said. His voice was firm, his words carried weight. For the first time, he did not sound like a prisoner, but like a challenger. The mistress's eyes narrowed. Her pride burned hot. She raised her hand and the shadows thickened. From the darkness, new beasts crawled forward, larger than before. Their claws dug into the stone. Their teeth glistened with green fire. Their growls shook the chamber. Ethan did not retreat. Instead, he stepped back slowly, leading them into the hall he had prepared. Chains lay loose on the ground, broken pillars balanced by thin ropes, sharp shards of crystal hidden beneath cloth. The beasts charged, their speed terrifying, their eyes fixed on his throat. At the last moment, Ethan pulled on a chain. The loose pillar collapsed, crashing down and blocking their path. He rolled aside as one beast lunged, its claws sinking into a hidden pit lined with sharp stones. The second roared and leapt, but Ethan threw a broken spear into the rope above, releasing another column that fell with crushing force. Dust filled the air. The beasts howled, their glowing eyes dimmed. Ethan moved fast, striking with precision. He dragged one chain tight around a beast's throat, forcing it to choke and thrash. Then with a sharp kick he drove the final beast into the corner where shards of crystal tore through its body. Silence returned. Only Ethan stood tall among the ruins. His chest rose with steady breaths. His rifle, still unused, his traps had done the work. From the high balcony, the mistress's fingers curled into fists. Her eyes burned with fury. She whispered, "Impossible." Yet the proof was before her. The human had taken her fortress and made it his own weapon. Her beasts, her shadows, her chains, turned against her. She descended slowly, her robes trailing. Like smoke, her voice cut through the dust. "You dare to use my power against me, human?" Ethan wiped the sweat from his brow. His eyes never left hers. "Not your power," he said. "Just power you thought no one else could see." Her steps faltered. The words struck her pride harder than any blade. She had always believed herself untouchable, the master of deception and control. Yet this soldier had undone her with nothing but patience and will. The mistress's glowing eyes softened for the briefest moment, curiosity flickering where anger had burned. But she masked it quickly. Her voice rose sharp again. You think you are clever, human, but you have only made your fall slower. You cannot outlast me, you cannot break what I am. Ethan tightened his grip on the chain still in his hand, his voice steady, calm as stone. Maybe not, but you've already lost one thing. Your control. The mistress froze. Her heart skipped, her pride burned. For the first time, someone had spoken to her as an equal, not as prey, not as a servant. His words echoed in her ears, shaking the silence of the fortress. She turned swiftly, her robes snapping like thunder. Her glowing eyes burned bright, hiding the storm inside her. She vanished into the shadows, leaving Ethan alone again. But this time, Ethan did not feel like prey walking through a predator's lair. The fortress no longer felt like her weapon. It felt like a battlefield, and he was no longer losing ground. He was taking it. He whispered into the silence, and step by step. His voice was steady, his will stronger than ever. Above him, the fortress moaned, the flames flickered, and the shadows stirred uneasily. The mistress had always been the hunter, but now she realized the truth. Her trap had changed, the hunter was being hunted. The fortress had grown restless. Its walls groaned, the lamps flickered unevenly, and the whispers that once belonged to the mistress now carried an edge of doubt. Ethan could feel it. The balance of power was shifting. Every step he took felt steadier, while every move she made seemed heavier. The mistress appeared again, not from above, not hidden in veils of shadow, but directly before him in the main hall. Her silver robes trailed along the floor, her glowing eyes brighter than fire. Yet as Ethan looked closer, he noticed something different. The cold perfection she carried before was no longer unshaken. There was a tremor in her hands, a hesitation in her steps. She raised her chin high, trying to hide it. Her voice echoed with command. Why do you resist me, human? Why do you refuse the gifts others beg for? I have given you gold, beasts, freedom, illusions, all have failed, but nothing resists me forever. Ethan met her gaze, calm and steady. Because what you call gifts are chains, he answered. His voice was quiet but carried strength. The mistress flinched just for a moment, as if the words had cut deeper than any blade. She moved closer, her eyes burning. Chains? She repeated, her voice sharp. You speak of chains, yet you walk in mine. Every stone around you is mine. Every shadow obeys me. You live and breathe because I allow it. Ethan's face did not change. His reply came without hesitation. No, I live because I fight. I breathe because I refuse to bow. The mistress froze, her glowing eyes locked on his. For years, she had heard men scream, beg, cry. For years, her ears had grown used to weakness. But this voice was different. Calm, unshaken. It was not defiance born from rage, but strength born from conviction. Her hand rose, power gathering like a storm in her palm. The air thickened, shadows curled at her feet. The fortress shook with her anger. But then her hand faltered. She lowered it slowly, her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, she questioned herself. She whispered almost to herself, What are you, human? What makes you stand when all others fall? Ethan stepped forward, his boots echoing in the silence. Nothing special, he said. I'm just a man who won't kneel. The mistress's glowing eyes trembled. Her heart thudded in her chest. For the first time in many years, she felt something she had buried. Uncertainty. She turned away, her robes flowing behind her like smoke. But her steps were quick, unsteady. Alone in her private chamber, she tore the veil from her face. Her hands pressed against the mirror-like wall. Her reflection stared back at her, her eyes burned. But inside them, she saw the flicker of doubt. She had always been sure of her power, sure of her control. But now cracks ran through the mask she wore. The fortress whispered around her, not in praise, not in obedience, but in unease. The stone walls seemed to ask the same question she feared. Was she losing? Her thoughts spun. Her pride screamed she wanted to crush him, to shatter his spirit. Yet another part of her, small but growing, whispered something dangerous. It whispered that perhaps he was not weak. Perhaps he was strong in a way she had never understood. She clenched her fists, whispering to herself, "No, he is only human. He cannot win." But her voice shook. Her heart betrayed her. Back in the halls, Ethan continued walking, his eyes sharp, his steps steady. He did not know what storm brewed inside the Mistress, but he could feel it in the air. The fortress no longer bent easily to her will. The chains rattled, the flames flickered as if the fortress itself was uncertain. That night she came to him again. Her eyes burned bright, but behind them was something raw. "Tell me," she demanded. "Why do you resist me? Why do you not fear me? Do you not see what I am?" Ethan stood tall, his voice calm. "I see you, not as a goddess, not as a queen, not as a mistress of shadows. I see someone trying too hard to prove she cannot be broken." Her breath caught. The words hit her chest like a blade. She had hidden behind power and illusions for so long, but he had seen through it with simple words. She turned her head sharply, her glowing eyes flashing with both fury and something she could not admit. "Pain," she whispered, her voice softer than before. "You think you understand me, human, but you know nothing of my chains." Her eyes dimmed for just a moment, her mask slipping. Ethan did not press. He only said, "Then maybe you should stop chaining yourself." The Mistress staggered back, her eyes wide, her lips trembled. She spun quickly, her robes hiding her face as she vanished once more into the shadows. But the cracks had already spread. Her mask was no longer perfect, her control no longer absolute. The fortress groaned louder, the shadows moved restlessly, and the Mistress herself could not stop the truth. For the first time she feared not for her power, but for herself. The fortress had always been the Mistress's throne, her prison and her weapon. For centuries she had ruled within its black walls, bending intruders to her will. Yet now the fortress whispered differently. Its chains rattled not in her command, but in doubt. Its flames burned low as if waiting for something beyond her control. Ethan walked through its halls, his boots steady, his eyes sharp. He had faced treasure meant to tempt him, beasts meant to kill him, illusions meant to chain. Him, he had turned them all aside. Now the fortress itself felt less like an enemy and more like a witness. The Mistress appeared once more, but this time she was not alone. Behind her stood figures cloaked in silver armor, tall and alien, their faces hidden. They were her people, her council, the ones who judged her strength. Their glowing eyes watched Ethan as though weighing his worth. The Mistress raised her chin, her mask of power barely holding together. Her voice rang out, "Behold the human who defies me. He believes himself stronger. He resists my treasures, my beasts, my illusions. But today, you will see him fall." Her voice shook slightly, but she forced it louder. The council's eyes shifted between them. Some glowed with hunger for the Mistress's victory, others with curiosity. One voice whispered, "If the human breaks, her throne stands." Another muttered, "But if he does not..." The words faded, heavy with meaning. The Mistress turned toward Ethan, her eyes burning brighter than ever. "Kneel now," she commanded. "Before them, before me. Prove what you truly are, or be destroyed." Ethan stood tall, his rifle at his side, his voice calm. "I told you once," he said. "I will not kneel." The words cut the silence like a blade. The council stirred. Their glowing eyes flared. The Mistress's lips trembled behind her veil. Anger surged within her. She raised her hands, calling forth the fortress itself. Chains burst from the walls, lashing out like serpents. Shadows poured from the ground, beasts forming again, larger, stronger. The air shook with power. The hall itself seemed alive with fury. Ethan moved swiftly, not with panic, but with precision. He had prepared for this. The chains struck, but he redirected them, wrapping them around the columns, pulling the stone down on the beasts. The shadows lunged, but he drove them into the traps he had laid, broken spears and crystal shards. The council watched, silent. Their eyes widened as the human fought not with desperation but with strategy. He was not prey. He was commander of the field. Every trap the mistress had laid was turned against her. Every strike she made fell into his plan. One chain snapped back, wrapping around her own arm. For the first time, the mistress staggered, her control slipping. Her glowing eyes widened. She pulled desperately, but the fortress resisted her command. The very walls trembled. Not for her, but against her. Ethan stepped forward, his voice carrying through the chaos. "Your traps are no longer yours," he said. "You set them for me, but you chained yourself." The mistress gasped. Her glowing eyes flickered. She tried to raise her voice, to command, but the council was already watching her mask shatter. They saw the doubt in her movements, the weakness in her stance, the fear behind her eyes. One of them spoke aloud. "She is losing." Another whispered, "The human stands where she falls." Their voices grew louder, murmurs spreading. The mistress turned in panic, her glowing eyes wide. "No, I am your mistress. I command you." But her words carried no power now. Her people had seen the truth. They had seen Ethan resist every chain, turn every trap, and stand unbroken where she faltered. To them, he was no longer just a prisoner. He was proof of strength she did not possess. The chains that lashed at Ethan suddenly stilled. The beasts dissolved into smoke. The fortress grew quiet. The council lowered their heads, their glowing eyes dimmed in respect, not for her, but for him. The mistress stumbled back, her robes flowing like torn shadow. Her glowing eyes burned with something she had never felt. "Shame," she whispered. "This was my trap, my design, my power." Her voice broke. "And yet," Ethan stepped closer, his gaze steady. "And yet you are the one trapped," he said. His words echoed through the hall, final and undeniable. The council knelt, their armored figures bowing to the human. The fortress itself groaned. The flames brightened, as if declaring its new master. The mistress stood frozen, her heart pounding, her mask shattered completely, her glowing eyes dimmed. For the first time, she lowered her head. The sound of chains rattling filled the hall, not around Ethan, but around her. Her trap had backfired. Her pride had broken. She had been the hunter, but now she stood as the caught. Ethan looked at her, not with hatred, not with triumph, but with steady calm. He spoke the words that ended it all. "You tried to own me, but in the end you lost yourself." The mistress's lips trembled, her glowing eyes closed, and before her people, before the fortress, before the human she could not break, she bowed her head,